Today I'm going to show you my top 10 list of life hacks every bread baker needs.
Featuring a glass bowl, an amazing temperature controlled proofing box, a stick and a magic razor blade. And of course the perfect bread.
Super fluffy. This is perfect. Number 1 is a really cool hack that I always like to use. This hack is called autolysis. This is especially handy for lazy people like me. You have to knead less. On top of that, this starts a few chemical reactions. They improve how easy it is to handle your dough, the taste, and the browning in the oven. Let me show you. I already set up the dough, which is just flour and water. I'm going to be stirring this for a minute and then I will stop. And then I'm not gonna knead any further. Now that was even less than a minute. I just wanted to make sure that all the flour is nicely incorporated and that there are no chunks of flour left. And look at how much this dough is still tearing. I could continue kneading this, but this is a little bit of a waste of time. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover this for 15 minutes so it doesn't dry out. Then I'll be back and you'll see what magic happened. Sorry, German mode activated. 10 minutes passed and let's have a look at the dough. Do you see that? That's the sort of window pane test that you want from your flour. This dough is already looking amazing and we got all that by waiting. On top of that, mixing flour and water starts a few biochemical reactions. I have a full video on that topic, please do check that out, because this really, just letting flour and water sit for a longer period of time is gonna make every bread so much better. The next hack is very handy. Sometimes you feel that your dough is very sticky. It's hard to touch it because you just create a big mess on your hands. Now with this hack, say no more. It's gonna be a lot easier. So I just finished kneading this dough and have a look at this. Have a look how sticky this still is. The problem is the surface of this dough. When we touch the dough, we do touch a lot of the dough. When we make a nice round surface, we touch less surface and it's gonna be less sticky. All we wanna do at a 45-degree angle, push into the dough and drag it over the surface. It's important that there's no flour on your surface. See, this part here of the dough is not rotating. The dough becomes nice and round. Now I'm touching the dough and it's no longer sticky. This is a super nerdy life hack. The problem with sourdough baking and baking is that the temperature changes daily. You have to adapt to that. Just a few degrees of change result in your bread fermenting much faster or much slower. That's for instance why some people are saying, okay, in summertime I'm baking amazing bread, but in wintertime I'm not. Anyways, I got a cool solution prepared for that. Let me show you. So I got me a nice styrofoam box, then I installed a heating mat and a thermostat controller. I press this button, which activates the thermostat controller. I can set the temperature, and then I always have a consistent environment for my dough. I slide in my dough. I added an additional fan, which is just optional, but it helps with the heat distribution. Geek mode activated. I installed a Raspberry Pi with a camera so that I have a live stream of my dough and an additional transparent window. Then I close this and I always have exactly the same environment when baking. Sometimes you don't know for how long your bread should sit. In general, every dough. For yeast-based doughs, you should aim for it to double in size roughly, but sometimes that's hard to see. For sourdough bread, it's a little bit more complicated. If you ferment your sourdough bread for too long, it's just going to turn into a sticky mess. Let me show you a great hack.
We're going to be extracting a small sample from our main dough. Depending on the size increase, we know that our dough is done with the fermentation. It's much easier to see this on this tiny jar rather than the big dough in a large container. Then we mark it with a rubber band or with a pen. And the moment this has reached a certain size limit, we know exactly that our fermentation is done. It's so easy. For yeast-based doughs, you should aim for doubling in size. For sourdough though, it's slightly different. The size increase depends on the protein that you have inside of your flour. 80% of that is gluten-free wheat. The more you have, the longer you can ferment your dough, and thus the more you can inflate your dough. You'll have a fluffier bread in the end. So to make life a little bit easier, I prepared this small table for you. Just double check your flour's protein percentage and then you know for how much of a size increase you should aim.
Next up is an even more reliable way. Unfortunately, it's also a little bit expensive. For sourdough bread, you can use a pH meter to determine whether your dough is done with its initial stage of fermentation. This stage is called the bulk fermentation. That's because you typically ferment many doughs in one large bulk. And with this pH meter, it's so simple to check whether your dough is done or not. Let me show you. So this dough just came out of the proofing box and let's check the pH of this dough. We're at around 4.3, 4.2 here. It depends a little bit on where you measure it. You always want to measure different areas of the dough. Here it's even a little bit lower. So the recommended pH is anywhere between 4.2 and 4.5 to finish this first stage of the fermentation process. It depends a little bit on what kind of taste you want. If you want to have a more sour taste, the pH should be a little bit lower. If you want your bread to be a little bit more fluffy, you should have a higher pH. But this tool here definitely always makes you finish this part of the process exactly on time. Now the next one is gonna sound super stupid, but involves your finger. After you've shaped your bread into a batard shape, boule shape, baguette shape, whatever you like, you need to determine when it's done proofing. And for that, the most reliable way is to use your finger. Let me show you. After shaping, the proofing stage starts. And the best way to check whether your dough is done with proofing is to use your finger. Flour your finger a little bit and then simply poke the dough. You see this springing back quite quickly. This means our dough is not inflated enough. Repeat doing this until you see that this dent is recovering very, very slowly. Then you know that your dough is done proofing, which means you will have more oven spring and you will have a much better crumb. For yeast doughs, this might take anywhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours. For sourdough, this is always taking around 1 to 3 hours typically. So using your finger is a really reliable way to always bake excellent bread. Around 1 hour later, and you can see how this dough has nicely increased in size. And note how this dent is now recovering much slower. It still has probably another hour or so to proof. Just to give you another example, in this case I poked this dough and then around 1 minute later the dent is still visible. Proof perfectly on time. I am always struggling with scoring. Scoring is when you do a small incision into your dough. Then your dough is going to rise upwards while it's baking through that incision. Now when your dough is at room temperature, it's sometimes very, very hard to score. You will just tear the dough. But I get you covered, I have a nice hack for you. Just like always, we are going to proof our dough at room temperature. We will wait until the finger poke test passes. And then, here comes the hack. We are going to take our dough and we are going to place it inside of our freezer. This means that the surface of the dough is going to cool down quite a lot. While the dough is in the freezer, we are already preheating the oven. I like to place the dough for around 30 minutes to 45 minutes inside of the freezer. With the cooled down surface, it's so much easier to score the bread. You will tear the dough a lot less, and that's very important to get that beautiful ear. Now, if you're cheap like me and don't want to spend a lot of money on a fancy scoring knife, alarm I think is the proper pronunciation, then this hack might be something that you're interested in. Let me show you. Now, if you don't have a fancy tool like this, all you can do is just take the razor blade directly. Be careful to not cut yourself. Or if you feel fancy, you can just use a sushi stick and a razor blade. Then all you do is you mount the razor blade on the sushi stick and you have your super powerful lamb. Using the razor blade like this directly, you have a lot more control about how you're going to score. Did you ever want to record an amazing time-lapse of your bread baking? Step 1, of course, is to clean your oven, but then you can just use a glass bowl to simulate the Dutch oven. Let me show you. For the next hack, make sure that you nicely cleaned your oven door. Then place a tray or another stone in your oven and a bowl of glass. Preheat your oven to around 230 degrees Celsius for half an hour. Now I removed the glass from the oven. It's very hot. I'm placing it also here on this rack, which has also been preheated. Glass doesn't like rapid changes in temperature. I'm just placing this to the side while I'm placing the loaf on my tray or stone. Now we are going to place the glass bowl right on top. Glass bowl has been placed. Let's put this to the oven. And now I can record an epic time lapse for the Instagrams. Just like that, I place it a little bit to the side so that I have less of a glare. Now, if you don't care so much about seeing your bread while it bakes, you can also simply use a large pot, a metal pot like this, and put it on top of your dough while it's baking, and it's also a little bit more secure. With glass, you always have the issue if the temperature changes too fast, it might shatter. A big problem of baking is sometimes that your bread is ready at times when you don't want it to be ready. For us Germans, it's very important to have fresh bread for breakfast. Now, how are you gonna do that? Your dough might be ready in the evening, and you might also not want to get up at 3 a.m. to start making your dough. I got a cool little hack prepared to show you how to get perfect bread every time for breakfast. And this bread is not done yet. It doesn't have the color. I would say it probably still needs around another 10 minutes or so. But we're not gonna finish baking this now, we're gonna let this finish bake tomorrow. And let me show you how we're gonna do that. Make sure that the core temperature of your bread is at least 95 degrees Celsius. Then you know it's already done. The inside is done, the outside is not done yet. To make sure the bread doesn't dry out, we will cover it in a nice kitchen towel like this. This makes sure the bread stays nice and humid and the crumb won't dry out. We will let this sit for an hour and then we're going to transfer this to the fridge. If you have a cooling rack, it's even better to place it on top of a cooling rack. The bread has nicely cooled down now, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to place it in a plastic bag. It's airtight, and this means our bread is not gonna dry out any further. Then I'm gonna place it in the fridge like this for as long as I like. It's gonna stay good like this for a week.
Oh, and one of the reasons why you want to bake sourdough is that with the sourdough bread, your bread is going to stay good for a much longer period of time. That's because the acidity from the sourdough is blocking out other pathogens. Your bread is going to catch mold a lot slower. The only issue is that your bread is going to dry out relatively quickly. And that's why this fridge hack is really excellent.
So now a little bit later you can see that there's already water starting to condense here inside of the plastic bag, and that's exactly what we want. That's a good sign everything is working. The bread is now also relatively soft. That's because of the high humidity. Now all we have to do is we have to just let this bake until we have the nice brown color. Place the bread in your non-preheated oven and then just heat it at around 230 degrees Celsius until your bread has the desired color. And around 15 minutes later, this is how our bread looks like. Perfect color, but this is of course also personal preference. So if you like it darker, heat it for a longer period of time. If you like it less dark, then only very shortly. Now please wait around 30 minutes before slicing it, or else you're gonna tear the crumb completely. Perfect looking sourdough bread with all the different colors. Super fluffy. This is perfect. What are your favorite life hacks for bread baking? Please do share them in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something new.